Hello and welcome to Fight News Now Extra. I'm John Pollock. As we get set for the weekend, John Ramdeen, Robin Black, and I will be discussing the UFC 193 card. A major heavyweight announces his retirement amidst controversy. Ben Askren doesn't fight at the One Championship card, and Holly Holm reveals a very interesting clause in her UFC contract. Holly Holm spoke to Fox Sports out of Australia and revealed an interesting aspect of her UFC contract. Holm signed with the promotion in 2014 with a 5-fight deal. This Saturday's card will mark the third time that Holm has fought for the UFC, but will be her most financially rewarding one. Holm's management added a specific portion to the contract regarding a fight with Ronda Rousey, in which Holm would earn significantly more than her other fights because of the business that Saturday's fight is expected to generate. Mirko Cro Cop has announced his retirement from the sport in a story that continues to develop by the day. Initially, Cro Cop stated he was pulling out of his November 28th fight with Anthony Hamilton due to a shoulder injury and stepping away from the sport. It was later made public by the UFC that he was flagged for a possible violation by USADA. Cro Cop has since admitted publicly that he was using blood plasma and growth hormone to rehab the shoulder and informed the UFC of what he had injected. It's unknown if there is an actual positive test for HGH on Cro Cop or whether they are going based on his own admission to taking the banned substance. And finally, One Championship held their card in Singapore on Friday, but didn't have their main event as Ben Askren and Luis Santos did not fight. Santos came in overweight at the weigh-in, stepping onto the scale at 172 pounds for the welterweight championship fight. Askren agreed to go ahead with the fight if they fought at 190 pounds, and Santos didn't agree to those terms, and the fight was called off. Tune in on Saturday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time here on Fight Network as John Ramdeen, Robin Black, Gabe Morency, and myself will be counting down to UFC 193 with a preview of all of the fights on the main card, along with Gabe's best bets. And then immediately after the main event, tune back here to Fight Network for an exclusive post-show as we'll run through all of the action from Melbourne, Australia, and bring you the post-fight press conference. Here with John Ramdeen and Robin Black, we are counting down to UFC 193 coming up on Saturday night. Lots of news to discuss. First of all, we have a wager going here about how well UFC 193 does, with the figure being 900,000 buys. You guys saying over, I'm saying under. I just don't think that there's the level of interest that we had 24 hours before Bethe Correia was going to fight Ronda Rousey, regardless of where Bethe Correia ranked in terms of competition for Ronda Rousey. And I don't know how many people are buying into the idea that Holly Holm is going to be a threat, whether she is or not.
Yeah, I think if you listen to what Ronda Rousey had to say, of course she respects all of her opponents, but I think the reason why a lot of people were so interested in the Correia fight is because there was a little bit of bad blood there. With this Holly Holm fight, I think people in the know realize there's a legitimate challenge here that to Holly Holm, coming from the world of boxing, which many people believe is one of the most, if not the most, difficult martial art to master, for her to come from that world, be a champion from that world, understand range and distance, and working with the team at Greg Jackson, Mike Winklejohns in Albuquerque, the elevation, all of these factors. We don't know what her ground game is because they've kept everything hidden from the masses. So I think when you look at that, and I think that the hardcore fans, on top of the fact that I've seen Ronda Rousey
I think this pay-per-view is going to do really well. Yeah. I'm not thinking this is going to be a bomb. I'm thinking nothing less than 750, which is a tremendous amount. But to get to a figure like 900, I'm sorry, this fight has no heat, and that's the difference between fights that do that level of business, is that there's a grudge, there's an anticipation factor. I know you guys are looking, everyone's here in this office is looking forward to this fight. But is the greater public counting down to see Holly Holm and Ronda Rousey? I don't know.
She was on Ellen.
I think it's Ronda Rousey, an inanimate carbon rod, is a big enough thing that people will tune in. I think we have gotten very used to what a big star she is, but I mean, just have a conversation with your aunt or your uncle. Yeah. You mention that we're involved. Oh yeah, you guys do that UFC stuff. The only word that comes out of their mouth is Ronda Rousey. They don't know about anybody else. I think just seeing her right now is so big, it wouldn't matter if she was fighting John Ramdeen.
I'd pay to see that, absolutely. A lot of other topics here. Mirko Cro Cop, what a week this has been. Originally announcing he's off of the Seoul, South Korea card with a shoulder injury, and in that statement noting that he had used a cocktail of drugs. Now apparently, USADA showed up on his doorstep, and then after that, he contacted the UFC, letting them know what he had been using, including growth hormone. So at this point, we don't even know if there is an actual positive test in the possession of USADA where they caught him for growth hormone, which has a very small window that you can detect it in someone's system. And they may simply be going off of what Cro Cop, this guy has admitted that he has used a banned substance, and now it's a possible violation. I think for that reason, Cro Cop might have been too honest in this case.
Yeah.
Hey, man. Who knew that a cocktail of drugs was something that you shouldn't use? Who knew? Poor Cro Cop didn't know. But this is kind of, there's a lot of different aspects to the use of drugs, and this is definitely along the lines of, at some point, if this guy was not a professional athlete and using a cocktail of drugs, including plasma and human growth hormone, is something that you could do if you were, say, a construction worker who had gotten an injury. They might give you this treatment to help you heal that injury so you could go back to work. You can't do that in fighting. You can't do that in sports. So that's the deal. Do we judge old Cro Cop at 40 years old going to war like that, who's pretty honest? We get that. I think we understand that kind of scenario.
Now, I would just assume that, again, if you go to some of these old school gyms, and I think Mirko Cro Cop has said the same team that he's been working with for the last decade or so. And again, does the UFC, did they send paperwork for all of their fighters and their managers to understand, okay, as of July 1st, these are all the things that basically you have to adhere to all these rules because we're going to come knocking on your door. Did Cro Cop and his team look at that? Or did they do this? Okay, I've got this shoulder injury. I got to take the drugs. And it's like, wait a second. What's going on here? Should we be taking that stuff?
I'm pretty sure everybody knows you're not supposed to take growth hormone. I'm pretty sure that one gets past the language barrier.
Why would he admit to using it then?
I think possibly because he was going to get caught. You know what I mean? It's like, what's worse? You cheated. Look, we have the evidence. Or, I was really injured. Same thing with Anderson Silva. It's like, why start talking about your wiener? I can't, my wiener doesn't work. That's nonsense. If Anderson Silva said to the world, you saw my leg break in half, one of the treatments for a broken in half leg is using some of this stuff. I did use it. I knew it was wrong, but you saw my leg. I think we'd all kind of understand that more than the wiener thing.
Last thing, Ben Askren, Luis Santos missed weight. Ben Askren said, listen, if you come in at 190 tomorrow, which is 20 pounds over where they were going to fight at 170, we'll have the fight. Luis Santos did not agree. I completely back Ben Askren in this case. Any disagreement?
No, not at all. Actually, when Robin and I were in Saskatchewan, we were talking to some of Ben Askren's teammates. He is completely fine. He's taken care of. So this is not a situation where if, in order for Ben Askren to make some money, he's got to take these fights. Ben Askren, he's one of those very few that's been able to make some dollars outside of the UFC.
You guys know how I feel about people who miss weight.
That is Robin Black, a man who has been on the other side of that. We have more Fight News Now Extra, and it's coming up now.